What's up, guys, and welcome back. You know what it is. It's Altcoin Friday, so we're looking at Bitcoin, Ethereum, Solana, XRP, and Sui. And a huge welcome to any new viewers out there. If you're liking the breakdown today, think about hitting that subscribe button to join the team. And hey, if you haven't already, activate that notification bell because I'm here with new videos every single day. And now let's dive into the charts. Alright guys, as always, kicking things off on the largest time frame for Bitcoin today, and we want to follow up on what we saw yesterday on the 3-day chart, where of course we've been still looking at this candle here, and we've been in very undecisive territory. We have been still trading above $104,000, and that's why I told you if we start seeing 3-day closes below there, then we have a very clear bearish engulfing here, and then we're going down towards the key area here between $100,000 and $98,000. The current bottom here for Bitcoin is right at $100,400. And the pivot point now is very clear as well. We can see that we have a clear downtrend here now, so we want to get above the prior high, and that's right at $106,000. So if we see 3-day closes above there, then we have a very strong indication here that we get another crack at the top area. But the momentum now continues to the downside, and therefore we can expect at least a correction here towards $98,000. And then of course it becomes all decisive in that range there. We can see that there's really nothing left here if we lose that as a support till we get down here into the low $90,000 to high $80,000 range, where we can see very, very strong historic support and resistance here in alignment also with the 61.8. So that is very key then, of course, here from a Fibonacci retracement perspective as well. As we know, if the 38.2 breaks, then we have a big hit rate with the 61.8, and that aligns perfectly here with the price action in this chart. Right guys, so now let's go over to the daily chart. There we see things even clearer. Here's a head and shoulder pattern that of course we've been talking about here since 2 weeks here. I think 13 days ago I started talking about it when we were in the range here of $110,000 to $112,000 before we formed this massive bearish engulfing here. I told you guys that this is a very likely scenario. Of course, I did not whip out my crystal ball to tell you what's going to happen in the charts. It was purely based on price action, right? We had a very strong uptrend here. And I always tell you guys, the steeper the trend, the more unsustainable, right? And therefore, that was just a matter of time before that breaks down at some point, right? And here was the exact point. We also posted over on X that the trend is your friend until the end. And that's when we were suggesting that this trend here is broken the same day that got confirmed. And then we got this move to the downside here. So how did I know that this is going to end up in a head and shoulder pattern? So if you look at the price action here, we're clearly printing higher highs and higher lows in this structure here, right? And here we put in our last high, followed by a low. Then we formed a head with a higher high. And then it's very likely that if we break that range here, that we come down to the logical support of the previous range. Then of course we are clearly on the neckline for the head and shoulder pattern. And then it's very likely, after losing such a strong trend and such a strong range, that we get an underside test of it. And that's exactly what I said in that video back then, that we then likely get a test here of the $106,000 range again. If we find a rejection there, then we would confirm the right shoulder. And if that then doesn't get invalidated, then we have a very strong head and shoulder pattern. That will likely take us down to the targets of that pattern, which lay in the $95,000 area. Now, of course, we still have very strong support in the $100,000 to $98,000 range, which we see right here. Current support is coming from the 50-day SMA. As you can see, a very strong bounce. And that also lays in alignment. Of course, one trend breaks, another trend starts forming. And there we can see here very clearly, if we look at the support line for this downtrend, that was in perfect alignment with the 50-day SMA, therefore a strong area of confluence. And now we're seeing the same thing again here. We got the underside test of that prior very strong range, and now it becomes very, very decisive. If we get a rejection here, then of course that trend continues here. And there we see that the next strong area of confluence here, not only from a price action perspective, also the same trend line comes into play, and the 38.2 on the Fibonacci retracement. So very, very clear here that that's the key area now. And as you guys know, that now by confirming this head and shoulder pattern and by losing this key area here, then I'm biased towards a longer consolidation and a deeper correction for Bitcoin here that will last throughout the summer. So I'm not looking at this area here as the bottom, the 95K area. I'm thinking that over time, we're going back down here to that key area of interest, which is marked as the weekly area of interest here. You can see in the $91,000 to $88,000 range. And there we see very, very strong confluence as well. We have this key area of interest here from from a horizontal support and resistance perspective, as well as the 61.8 on the Fibonacci retracement. And here's the exact same thing, right? If we come down here to this key support area between $198,000 and we lose the 38.2 and that is support, then of course the 61.8 gets a massive hit rate, and that doesn't mean that we go straight down there, but then I think that we will be trading here between this range between $98,000 and $100,000 down towards the low 90K levels, and eventually we will come down here to the high 80K area, somewhere in the $88,000 to even $87,000 range, where we then likely find the bottom here for this correction and continue upwards from there. And then something really, really important comes into play as well, which we will see on Sunday on the weekly chart. So there again, guys, make sure not only to be subscribed, but also to hit the notification bell to not miss out on that update, because there is, of course, a key indicator that will give us clear indication whether we are still in a bull market or now in a bear market. Right, guys, now in validation of this whole thing, the bullish scenario here would be, of course, to take out the current pivot point here. If we look at it from a trend perspective, we see clearly that we have a downtrend now. And there we put more weight always on the resistance line, as we want to invalidate the downtrend by breaking the prior high in the trend. And therefore the pivot point would be here right at $106,000. So basically exactly the same point as we saw on the 3-day chart. And with that we would break the dynamic resistance line here, as well as the horizontal level that is key to indicate a trend reversal here from this local downtrend. But as I said before, the momentum continues to the downside. And specifically also because what we saw on the 3-day chart here, as far as the oscillators go, right? We look at the stochastic momentum here at the top, and there we saw that throughout this entire bull market so far, every time we came out of overbought territory and fell back below 40, that was followed by a strong correction for Bitcoin. And we saw that here in all these instances, as has been the case. Specifically also, if we lost the moving average on the way down, then that was a very strong indication that we have a deeper correction. We can look at the last few occasions here. For example, here we spent a very long time here in this overbought territory, ended up printing the 108K top, and then we lost the moving average. And after that, we saw that a strong correction followed. And then we came back above the moving average, back into overbought territory, just dipped into there, briefly printed the 109K top. And then the moment we fell out of that area again, we saw that we had the massive correction that led us to our current local bottom here at $74,400. So same thing here again, from that perspective as well. It indicates that we can expect a stronger correction here for Bitcoin now. Now guys, the 4-day chart gives us an even clearer image of what happened yesterday, and that's exactly what I told you guys here. This is the key level that we wanted to hold. You can see here right at $104,000, and there you can see this is where we then found a massive bearish candle here that closed below there and brought us down here to the daily range that we can see here. We immediately fell below the 200 SMA here on the 4-hourly chart. And now we're trying to reclaim it and getting an underside test of that prior range here at $104,000, which sits in perfect alignment with the dynamic support line here from this symmetrical triangle, right? So here's a very, very strong area. If Bitcoin now gets rejected here, then it becomes very clear here that the trend is continuing downwards to this range here, which we saw is massive support on the larger time frames right at $98,000. And then, of course, more resistance above there, right at $105,000, the 50 EMA here, which of course has been massive support here and the lifeline throughout the entire uptrend here for Bitcoin since the $74,000 bottom pretty much. And therefore now very, very strong resistance. We can see here with all those red circles, you can actually add another one right here. All these rejections in this area that we got after losing it as support, right? So a very, very strong resistance area here between $104,000 and $105,000. And here we can see very clearly we want to get a breakout out of this downtrend here. Then we still want to get above $106,800 roughly here on a 4-hourly closing basis. And then that could potentially drift over into the daily chart and make us look bullish again. But as I said, the momentum is now very strongly to the downside, and we can expect this trend to continue downwards towards those price targets that we mentioned earlier. Right guys, that's it for Bitcoin. Let's wrap it up on the altcoins now and start things off here with Ethereum. And here we see on the weekly chart, massive resistance, something that we spoke about a couple of days ago here when we looked at ETH. And we've been forming really ugly patterns here by these spinning tops followed by a shooting star. You can even look at it as a gravestone doji here. Now we're currently forming another spinning top. So looking very, very bearish here at the top. Key resistance coming here also from the 50-week SMA. Of course, this is the key indicator to indicate whether we're bullish or bearish here on the weekly chart always. And also the 50 on the Fibonacci retracement, where we're retracing the entire downtrend from the $4,100 top to the $1,400 bottom here. So very, very strong resistance here in alignment with also this key area of interest that we can track back all the way till May 2021. And yeah, guys, this is where we actually set our targets a few weeks back here, where we said that if we start seeing daily closes above $2,100, that it's very likely that we meet massive resistance between $2,700 and $2,800. So here now, very, very clear indication that we put in our top here and that the trend is now continuing downwards here. If we look at it from a Fibonacci retracement perspective, we can see here the 38.2, very strong support in the area at right around $2,200, down towards the 50 here, $2,100. Very, very strong support area here. And I expect this to happen in the next few days if Bitcoin does not reclaim the $106,000 level here on a daily and 3-day closing basis at least. Daily chart also gives us very clear signs here that this range is lost. You can see the prior range closing lows here, right at $2,500. Fell below there, now getting an underside test from there. Also lost these two key Fibonacci levels here. We can see the uptrend retracement from the bottom to the top. There we're now below the 23.6, which has been massive support here throughout the entire range. Then also the 38.2 of the entire downtrend retracement here. We closed below it here. So very, very key to see here if we can reclaim this range now. And we really want to see closes back above $2,500 here to stay within this range for Ethereum. But here the same thing, momentum continues to the downside. And the next target here is right between $2,200 and $2,100 in this range below the 50-day SMA here. You can see from a moving average perspective, the 200-day SMA, the key indicator where we wanted to turn bullish here on the daily chart, but it turned out to be massive resistance. And now likely that we come down here to this area, once again between $2,200 and $2,100. Of course, that would bring us here below the 38.2, and then we could expect the price to go a little bit lower than that even and come back down here below $2,000, somewhere between $2,000 and $1,800. Right, guys, now XRP, here we can see on the weekly chart, very clear falling wedge pattern, of course a bullish pattern, very clearly defined dynamic resistance line and support line with multiple touch points. And there we met that again here in combination with the 50 on the Fibonacci retracement from this entire local downtrend here. Therefore, the key area down here comes into play where we also see the 50-week SMA, massive support in alignment with the dynamic support line, and a key area of interest that comes from all the way back in 2021 where XRP put in its highs there for the cycle. So there we see really, really strong support here in the range between $2 and $1.60 roughly. That then the likely bottom area for this correction here for XRP. Daily chart, we observed the death cross, of course, the other day. Of course, Bitcoin had a golden cross basically at the same time, and we tracked that back throughout the cycle, and that gave us a 100% hit rate that we always had massive rallies after that. And then, of course, we could have invalidated this death cross here on the XRP chart by Bitcoin rallying massively, but that didn't happen. Bitcoin could not turn the previous highs into support, got rejected immediately after, and now put in a triple top formation. And then, of course, drifted over into the rest of the market, including XRP. This death cross here got confirmed, and we saw a big move to the downside now. And now we saw also that we turned the 50-day SMA here into resistance in perfect alignment with the 38.2 from the retracement of this entire local uptrend here. Therefore, now the 61.8, the clear target here in this downtrend. First stop here right around $2. And then we can see the same thing here. We can imagine that the price comes down lower here towards the 78.6 and the dynamic support line here in the range between $1.80 and $1.60 as well here, where we then can expect the bottom to be here for XRP in this correction. And then, of course, to the upside, we can see in this local downtrend, we want to take out the prior high here. So the pivot point is right at $2.55 here roughly, where we also can see the strong resistance in alignment here with that previous high, the 50-day SMA. And then clearly above there, then we have another chance here at the dynamic resistance line and at the prior highs here. And then a clear confirmation would be daily closes above $2.60 here. Then we can expect XRP to go back up and to test the previous all-time highs. But here the same thing, the momentum continues to the downside, and we can expect lower price targets here for XRP. Solana, guys, we tried to reclaim the 50-week SMA, had massive resistance there in alignment with the 38.2 of the Fibonacci retracement of the entire local downtrend here. So same thing here, we saw two spinning tops followed by a bearish engulfing. So very clear indication here that we're seeing a correction here. And on a weekly chart, of course, that carries a lot of weight. And now we fell below the 50 on the Fibonacci retracement after losing the 38.2. So obviously the 61.8 here very strong, in alignment also with a key area of interest here. So the likely bottom target here that we've been speaking about all along here for Solana is right at $120 here. I don't expect the price to go much lower, although we can of course revisit the current lows here right below $100. But for now, this is massive support here and a huge opportunity right at $120. Daily chart, we can see that we found a massive support level here right now from a price action perspective. This very logical pivot point here in the downtrend where we were looking for a break of that to confirm the trend reversal here. And that then, of course, was turned into support. So prior resistance, massive support, now support again. But we also lost the 38.2 of the current local uptrend here. And therefore, likely that we come down here to the 61.8. And that's right at $130. And just below there is that key area of interest that comes into play from the weekly chart here, right at the $120. And there we also see the line in the sand for the Fibonacci retracement with a 78.6. So massive support here right between $130 and $120 for Solana. And now guys, let's look at SUI here, of course, the most bullish altcoin from the ones that we regularly look at. And there we can see now that, of course, here after getting a strong rejection in this key area of interest here, where you can see massive support and resistance historically here on the weekly chart, and also in alignment with the 61.8 where we retraced the entire downtrend. Of course, we broke the 38.2, traded here between the 50 and the 38.2, which of course gave the 61.8 a big hit rate here. We came up there, got rejected there, fell back down, and now here are on our way towards the 50-week SMA, which of course lays in perfect alignment with this key area of interest here, right between $2.50 and $2.20 here. This area, very, very strong support. And then if we go into the daily chart, and here we can see basically the same thing, guys, from a Fibonacci retracement perspective, where we retraced the entire local uptrend here. We can see we lost the 38.2, got rejected by it in alignment with the 50-day SMA. So now we are trying to get a retest of that prior range here. But after losing the 38.2, of course, the 61.8 gets a massive hit rate here. That brings us here to $2.70. And then likely here that this dwindles down and continues downwards here to the price area that we just saw on the weekly chart here, somewhere in the range between $2.50 and $2.20 here for a logical bottom for SUI throughout this correction. Right guys, these altcoins likely won't be rallying on their own now. A lot depends on Bitcoin and the entire market, and we can see Bitcoin dominance going up again here, and then we can potentially see that the market will start turning and we start bullish again between Q4 25 and Q1 26. And at that time, of course, Bitcoin dominance likely also reached its key target area where it usually tops out in the 70 to 74% range. And of course, I'll keep you updated on all of that. And in the coming days, we'll go back into the Bitcoin dominance chart again and see exactly how the trend developed there. All right, that's a wrap for Altcoin Friday. What are your thoughts, guys? Let me know in the comments down below. Let's get talking down there. And hey, if you haven't already, make sure you're subscribed. Hit that notification bell so you catch every single one of my updates. And while you're down there, also smash up that like button. And for my full analysis, make sure to join me over on X as well. I'm Patos Crypto over there, and if anything major breaks, that's where you find it out first. And of course, we are back tomorrow with Josh and the journey from beginner to crypto trader, part 5, where we will be looking at continuation candlestick patterns and basic chart patterns. So don't miss out. And as always, guys, happy trading and see you soon.